Hi, Right Writers. Cruz here. Thank you so much for joining me. In this video, we are going to be looking at the IELTS Practice Academic Writing Test, Task 2. We have 40 minutes to complete the task, and we should write a minimum of 250 words within this task. In addition, the IELTS counts this as almost like double what the task one requires as far as the points or the point system. And so it's important that we do really well on this academic writing test. I'm going to go ahead and start my timer because we have 40 minutes remaining. And let's go ahead and take a look at the prompt, right, writers? Learning English at school is often seen as more important than learning local languages. If these are not taught, many are at risk of dying out. In your opinion, is it important for everyone to learn English? Should we try to ensure the survival of local languages? And if so, how? Give reasons for your answer and include any relevant examples from your own knowledge or experience. Okay, so I'm going to take that part out, right, writers? And no doubt this is about persuasive writing. So we are trying to convince our readers, um, basically, convince our readers to side or to yeah, to side. That's a good way to say it, to side with our opinion, to support our opinion. And so that's the question. Is it important to for everyone to learn English? Should we try to ensure the survival of local languages? And if so, how? So I feel like a lot of times with persuasive prompts, right, writers, that they're sort of they give us an either or situation. And I think we should transform those either or prompts to both and, meaning I think it is both important to learn English and I think it is both important to learn local languages. To me, they're both valid. And I think, again, oftentimes in our society, in our cultures, we tend to have you can only choose one or the other, when in fact both um, can collectively live in the same world. They're both the world is accessible both to English and to other languages. And I think this idea of, you know, requiring just one over the other or having one language be dominant over another is to me short-sighted. So I'm going to go ahead and start my paragraphs because I have 40 minutes and I have 250 words. And right now, right, writers, my timer is at 37 minutes and 33 seconds. So let's take a look at how I want to start this. Let's see. Learning English is at school more important. Um, in your opinion, is it important for everyone to learn English? Should we try to ensure the survival of local languages? And if so, how? Um, okay. When one considers within our respective societies, of course, language comes to mind. Of course, language comes to mind. Okay. When one considers how communication takes place within our respective societies, of course, language comes to mind. Language serves as both a cultural connection and a cultural bridge. Therefore, in my opinion, while it is vital to preserve one's linguistic um, traditions, um, heritage, it is equally important. When one considers how communication takes place within our respective societies, of course language comes to mind. Language serves as both a cultural connection and a cultural bridge. Therefore, in my opinion, while it is vital to preserve one's linguistic traditions and heritage, it is equally important to learn languages such as English. So I'm thinking this idea, right, writers, of a bridge, a connection. Um, so bridge, I'm trying to think of a metaphor similar to a bridge, such as English to ensure a. I'm going to say this cultural exchange and then use bridge later. Okay, here's what I have so far, right, writers. When one considers how communication takes place within our respective societies, of course, language comes to mind. Language serves as both a cultural connection and a cultural exchange. Therefore, in my opinion, while it is vital to preserve one's linguistic traditions and heritage, it is equally important to learn languages such as English to ensure a secure cultural bridge. We could also say to reinforce cultural bridges. We may come back to that later. Right, writers. Okay, so that's sort of I'm going with that as my introduction, and I've got 29 minutes and 30 seconds remaining, right, writers. So I want to talk about linguistic traditions and heritage. Um, let's see. Okay, so preserving one's linguistic heritage. Preserving one's linguistic traditions and heritage. Um, Preserving one's linguistic traditions and heritage celebrates our diverse cultural landscape. When children are encouraged to when children are encouraged when children are encouraged to embrace their roots, self-confidence and pride, self-confidence and local pride, and pride. When children are encouraged to embrace their roots, self-confidence and pride prevail. However, denying one's background, let me go with another benefit of learning. So, in addition, In addition, it reminds us that we are complex, three-dimensional individuals. In addition, it reminds children that they are complex, three-dimensional individuals, and I could even include, dynamic, um, and complex three-dimensional individuals. However, denying one's background results in resentment, self-loathing, however, denying one's background results in self-loathing, resentment, and really, I mean, it's sort of like, it affects your, um, mental health as well. Um, However, denying one's background results in self-loathing, resentment, and um, we're going to start. I want to use hate, but I just feel like it's a little bit too strong right now. So I'm just going to stick with self loathing and resentment. Preserving one's linguistic traditions and heritage celebrates our diverse cultural landscape. When children are encouraged to embrace their roots, self confidence and pride prevail. In addition, it reminds children that they are, in addition, children are reminded that they are dynamic, complex, three-dimensional individuals. However, denying one's background, however, if children are expected to deny their background, their cultural background, self-loathing and resentment may ensue. Okay. I'm going to add another positive. Furthermore, so I'm thinking of, right, writers, this connection between different generations. So again, if your grandmother and grandfather or great grandmother or great grandfather speak a language that you no longer speaks, it creates a disconnect between generations. So furthermore, these linguistic connections solidify or reinforce generational. Furthermore, these linguistic connections reinforce generational. Let's see. Furthermore, these linguistic connections reinforce. Um, what do I want to say? Generational. So reinforce generational. Let's see. Okay, I'm having a brain blockage here, right, writers. Furthermore, these linguistic connections reinforce um, familial, stemming obviously from family, reinforce familial and generational ties. Let's go with that, right, writers. Furthermore, these linguistic connections reinforce familial and generational ties. However, if children are expected to deny their cultural background, self-loathing and resentment may ensue. Okay, 23 minutes and 50 seconds remaining, right, writers? Let's see. Oh, no, my bad. 16 minutes remaining, right, writers, and 50 seconds. Whoopsie. I guess my timer just kind of paused for a minute. Um, I need to get on with it. Indeed, language serves as a cultural connection, as an important cultural connection. Okay. Um, and cultural exchange. Um, Societies must also consider how learning a new language. Societies must also consider how learning a new language creates a cultural bridge, or um, allows for cultural exchanges to flourish, maybe. How learning a new language allows for cultural exchanges to flourish. Societies must also consider um, and balance how learning a new language allows for cultural exchanges to flourish. Okay, right, writers, I have 13 minutes remaining. So, no doubt I am going to copy this introduction and I'm going to make sure that it is my conclusion as well. So, I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste it again. And, okay. All right. So, literally the exact same introduction and conclusion, right, writers? Because again, I want to focus on the middle, or this really this second body paragraph, and I want to make sure that I have enough time to complete it. And so, the best way to do it, again, right, writers, is copy that introduction, make it your conclusion, and get on with it. So, societies must also consider and balance how learning a new language allows for cultural exchanges. Um, allows for cultural exchanges to flourish. English is one of the most, if not the most, dominant language. English is one of the most, if not the most, dominant language used. Being able to communicate with English speakers. Being able to communicate with English speakers opens, not only more cross-cultural, builds not only more cross-cultural bridges, builds more builds more cross-cultural bridges, Of course, being able to speak English, to speak with English, to communicate with English speakers builds more cross-cultural bridges. In addition, or moreover, societies must also consider and balance how learning a new language allows for cultural exchanges to flourish. English is one of the most, if not the most, dominant language used. Of course, being able to communicate with English speakers builds more cross cultural bridges. Moreover, opens, I want to say, as far as like economic, trade, um, moreover, English opens more doors, doors in trade, business. Moreover, English opens more doors in trade, business, education, and let's just call it, maybe economic prosperity. And I mean, I could argue just knowing a second language, I think it just really I mean, I think not just English, but really just knowing a second language is going to open these doors, both in trade, business, education, and, economic prosperity. So, no doubt, right, writers. Um, let's see. Societies must also consider and balance how learning a new language allows for cultural exchanges to flourish. English is one of the most, if not the most dominant language, is if not the most dominant languages used. And I'll say used in our world. Of course, being able to communicate in English, to communicate with English speakers builds more cross cultural bridges. That's hard to say. Builds more cross cultural bridges. Builds, instead of more, I'm going to say builds multiple cross cultural bridges. Moreover, English opens, and maybe I'm going to use the conjunction for English opens more doors in areas such as, and maybe I can say, medicine, technology, business, medicine, technology, trade, business, education, and economic prosperity. I'll just say this, and education. and then say something like, in turn, this can lead, in turn, this result in economic prosperity. In turn, acquiring this second language can result in economic prosperity. Okay, let's see where we are. We've got 3 minutes and 33 seconds or 30 seconds remaining, right, writers? I'm going to go ahead and do a word count because I want to see if I'm at, ooh, I'm too far ahead. Sorry about that, right, writers? I'm like, oh no, where did it go? That's for the next one, next video. So let me go ahead and shrink this a bit here as I'm losing vital time. um, so let's see. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and shrink this a bit more. And again, what I'm trying to see, right, writers, I'm trying to do a word count. And it just seems like when I do a Google Doc, um, just sometimes it just gets a little bit strange. Um, so let's see where I am here as far as a word count goes. 2 minutes remaining, right, writers? Okay, I'm at 198 words there. 198. I don't think I'm going to make it, right, writers? Um, 59. Okay, 198 plus 59. I think that's going to do it with 2 minutes remaining. So I wanted to go in again, just trying to think of something to sort of say, tying this together. I think I may have made it, right, writers. This is so exciting because I'm like, what? I did it. Um, let's see. In turn, acquiring this second language can result in economic prosperity. I want to just talk about how it's a balance of both. Um, Okay, I'm going to end it with that. 1 minute remaining, right, writers, 1 minute and 20 seconds. While it is vital, it is equally important to learn languages such as English to ensure a secure cultural bridge. Um, balancing 40 seconds remaining. Linguistic balance is key to encouraging. Linguistic balance is key. And I'm just trying to think of, right, writers, how to And my timer's up, right, writers? So I'm going to add just about maybe 30 seconds here because of the flub or whatever the issue with the mistake on trying to do the word count here. Um, ling- so a linguistic balance is key um, to um, embracing both the past and the present. Okay, I'm good with that, right, writers. I mean, I feel like that's fair, right, writers, because again, I had a couple of, technical issues here, and let's see if we're good. All right, 269 words. So we are good with respect to word count. Again, I gave myself a little bit of grace at the front end. So 269 words. And want to if you feel, right, writers, as if I gave myself too much time, feel free to battle it out in the comment section. But I really feel like that was kind of fair because I had a few situations where I was just like trying to again, when I was trying to get that word count, it just took some time away there. So I feel like a lot of times, right, writers, when we get these prompts and when the prompts are all about, the prompts are about um making a decision, an either or decision, I just feel as if, it's always um more it shows more of a risk on your part as a writer to sort of embrace more than one side and make an issue more complex, um, or some sort of controversy more complex rather than just simplifying it. And I say find an opportunity to shatter those dichotomies and to embrace a both and approach rather than just an either or. So we have our response here. I made it to 269 words. What it would score, I'm not really sure, but we're going to go ahead and take it one final read here before I leave you, right, writers. And again, I hope this was helpful, useful, and inspired you to, again, take those risks. And when you're ready, embark on that IELTS journey. Let's take it from the top, right, writers. When one considers how communication takes place within our respective societies, of course, language comes to mind. Language serves as both a cultural connection and a cultural exchange. Therefore, in my opinion, while it is vital to preserve one's linguistic traditions and heritage, it is equally important to learn languages, such as English, to ensure a secure cultural bridge. Preserving one's linguistic traditions and heritage celebrates our diverse cultural landscape. And maybe you should argue that it should say diverse cultural landscapes. That's fine. When children are encouraged to embrace their roots, self confidence and pride prevail. In addition, children are reminded that they are dynamic and complex three dimensional individuals. Furthermore, these linguistic connections reinforce familial and generational ties. However, if children are expected to deny their cultural background, self loathing and resentment may ensue. Indeed, language serves as an important cultural connection. Society must also consider and balance how learning a new language allows for cultural exchanges to flourish. And maybe you could argue, right, writers, that I should have placed a transition word in the front of this paragraph right here. And maybe I should have said something like, however, and that's fine. Um, let's continue. English is one of the most, if not the most dominant languages used in our world. Of course, being able to communicate with English speakers builds multiple cross cultural bridges. for English opens more doors in areas such as medicine, technology, trade, business, and education. In turn, acquiring this second language can result in economic prosperity. When one considers how communication takes place within our respective societies, of course, language comes to mind. Language serves as both a cultural connection and a cultural exchange. Therefore, in my opinion, while it is vital to preserve one's linguistic traditions and heritage, it is equally important to learn languages such as English to ensure a secure cultural bridge. Linguistic balance is key to embracing both the past and the present. And again, if it's only 250 words, right, writers, I might have cut a little bit of the conclusion to so that it does not sound as repetitive. But again, when you are pressed for time, part of that time management is again using the resources that you have, and that is rewriting or copying, you know copy paste that introduction and make it your conclusion, especially when you are under time constraints. So, with that said, right, writers, love you guys. Thank you so much for subscribing. I appreciate all my subscribers, and the numbers keep growing. Even one, whether it's one subscriber each day or one each week, it always brings a smile to my face, and I am forever grateful for those of you who, again, have subscribed and continue to watch these videos. Thank you so much. Again, love you guys, and I will see you next Tuesday. All right, take care. Bye bye.